We'll begin with the chanting of Om. पृथिवी शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगं शान्तिर् द्यौ शान्तिर्दिशः शान्तिरवान्तर दिशा शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर्वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिः चन्द्रमा शान्तिर् नक्षत्राणि शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिर्वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्गौ शान्तिरजा शान्तिरश्वः शान्तिः पुरुषः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिर्ब्राह्मणः शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः शान्तिर्मे अस्तु शान्तिः. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, aviravirmayedhi, rudrayatte dakshinam mukham, tena mam pahi nityam. Om. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts fully and protect us now and always. So, welcome everyone. Hope you had a good summer. Other than the Gita study group that we had on Wednesdays, most of our programs were suspended. Some of you, of course, were coming for the Gita class as well. And so many of us, we are meeting after quite a long time. And since we are meeting after a long time, in some sense, it might feel a little bit new. And that's why I thought it will be good to begin with the subject, self-renewal. Renewal really means if you put the prefix re, just like becoming new again. And we know that when we do something or see something after a long time, even if we have done it or seen it many times before, it feels a little bit new, but only for a short time. So very soon, once our satsangs will as they have resumed today, after a few weeks, they may not appear as new as it might appear now. And that is one problem, if you would like to call it a problem in life, that things don't remain new for a long time. They very quickly become old. And probably today that problem has become even more, that we very quickly get bored. We say, oh, I've seen this, I know that. And then we want something new, which works fine in a consumeristic environment. The people's desire for something new, and then of course there are these new products and new updates and just new things coming, and just we tend to think that just because something is new, it must be better. And very quickly we realize, if not sooner than later, that nothing is really new, that things are kind of cyclical. What appears as a fashion or the current trend today was a trend in the 50s or 60s. And then it kind of goes back, new things come in, and then old things are forgotten. And then after a while you'll find the old things come again under a new garb. And by which time the new generation has come in, and then they don't know what was there 40, 50 years ago. And then it appears new again. But it's important that we need to find a way of remaining fresh, remaining new. You see that sometimes in the eyes of a little child. If you look at the eyes of a little child, every time you bring some toy or some color or some picture or whatever, the way the child looks at it, it's almost as if I'm looking at it for the first time. But then as we grow older, that sense of curiosity, enthusiasm becomes less and less. For more and more things we begin to say, oh, I've seen it. I don't need to look at that again, or I don't need to see that again, don't need to do that again. And this constant quest for something new itself becomes a hurdle in spiritual life. And so what I wish to focus on today in the next few minutes is to find a way of renewing ourselves, so that instead of looking for something new outside, we are able to discover something new in our own heart, in our own soul. If we look outside, nature is continually renewing itself. We see, well, since the center is right on the bank of the Charles, it's almost, I often tend to revert to the imagery of a river. We can see, we know that a river is continually emptying itself, emptying its water in the ocean and becoming fresh, the new water. We might think it's the same river. As they say, no one steps into the same river twice. The water is continually changing. The river is, in a sense, continually renewing itself because the water enters into the sea and it's replenished through rain or snow. We see, very soon we will see, as fall descends upon us, we'll see trees shedding their leaves. And then after winter, which we hope won't be too severe this time, the trees will renew themselves again in spring. We see some creatures like snakes renewing themselves through shedding of their skin after they have grown a fresh one underneath. Even our own bodies are continually renewing themselves at the cellular level. Old cells are continually being eliminated and new cells are taking their place. Like the river again, the material that composes our body is also continually changing, and like the river, as I mentioned before, it gives us a sense of constancy, but things are continually changing within us. In our body, for instance, the blood is continually being purified, old cells are being replaced by new ones, and now these processes slow down with age, but we cannot deny that at the physical level, the body is continually trying to be new. Now we can contribute to this process of self-renewal through consciously practicing a healthy lifestyle, which includes a nutritious diet, adequate exercise, and right combination of rest and work. Now, while the body renews itself automatically, almost without our knowledge and mostly without our help, such is not the case with our minds. Now, the minds that each of us has does not renew itself automatically. The stuff that the mind acquires, ideas, feelings, sensations, they stick around and become problematic if they remain unprocessed. We are continually taking in more ideas, more sensations, more emotions, and they all remain just like a pile of junk in our minds, like and I'm sure most of us can identify, the unread magazines and papers at home. And they'll just pile up at some time and you keep on thinking, well, I'll read it later, until at some point in future you lose patience and then just trash them. Now, at some point, of course, as I said, we need to throw out what is not needed and keep what is important. The self, the spirit, the Atman does not change and doesn't need to be renewed. But it's the lower self, the ego, that is what is changing all the time. And that is inseparably connected with both our body and mind, which themselves are continually changing. Thus, when the ego is not able to process all the changes it experiences, then that leads to stress and strain. And the visible effect of it is physical exhaustion, fear, anger, hatred. In any number of ways, this kind of inner stress and anxiety, the inner kind of sense of alienation in some ways expresses itself. Now, self-renewal really means processing all experiences, pleasant and unpleasant, learning from them, throwing out what is not needed, keeping what is important, and through this process, as I said, we must become new again. Every day becoming new. Though the adjective used for the spirit, Atman, in the Upanishad is Puranam. Now, one meaning of Purana in Sanskrit means ancient. But that when the spirit or the Atman is said to be Puranam, it's not that it's just ancient. Shankaracharya in his commentary describes the word Puranam as Pura api nava iva, means even though it is ancient, it is every day fresh, it is new. That's the spirit, which is beginningless. So in some sense, there is nothing older than the spirit, and yet there is nothing more fresh than the spirit. Now, if we can do this processing of all the stuff within us intelligently, then we produce a healthy self, the healthy ego, which is absolutely necessary not only for spiritual living, but also for just regular, sane living. Now, physical rest should normally have brought us mental rest, and usually it does. But not, you see, when we dream, the mind is still active. So sometimes you might notice that you have slept for a long time and yet you don't feel very rested next morning. And most of it is because the rest, the real rest that most of us get is not through just sleeping, but through that small period of time every night, sometimes lasting only a few minutes when we are not even dreaming. And that is why it is sometimes called the dreamless sleep or sushupti. So it is in that state, those few minutes when we are not even dreaming, we get the best rest. Because even when we are dreaming, the mind is still jumping all the time. So you really don't get that rest. The only rest which is even better than the deep sleep is the rest you get in good meditation. So when we are able to meditate well, then our need for sleep is reduced. But short of that, we all need sleep. And of course, currently a lot of research is going on about how much sleep we need. They don't speak about dream and deep sleep, but even in a general sense, and apparently the consensus seems to be that for most of us, between 6 to 8 hours of sleep is recommended. That's what they say until the theory changes. But right now they say less than 6 and more than 8 may not be a good idea. In fact, just a couple of days ago I was reading and it said that insufficient sleep can also not only affect memory in the sense that when we normally think of affecting memory, we just think about forgetting. But what this study showed was that insufficient sleep would also create false memory. That is, you might think you have done something when you have not done it. So it's not just forgetting what you have done, but remembering what you have not done. It's something like that. Now, so how to make, so the sleep will rest the mind, but may not necessarily make it new. So how to make the mind new? You see, and I have said this on a number of earlier occasions. According to Vedantic worldview, every birth we get a fresh body. So even when the body gets old, and of course one day it's going to go, but when we are born again, whoever is born again will get a fresh body. The newness of the body is never in question. According to this theory of rebirth, we don't get a fresh mind. So the mind that we have now is the mind that we have had for a long, long time. So mind is much older than the body. And so the mind needs special care to be made new again, because the body will get replaced, the mind will not be. And so we need to find ways to keep the mind new and fresh. Now, what is it that makes the mind old or seem old? And the simple answer to that is it's just past memories and unresolved conflicts. Now, becoming new mentally would mean breaking the shackles of the past and also, in some sense, the shackles of the future. What is our sense of time? When we speak about time, and there is a 13th or 14th century text written by Bhartrihari in which he speaks about time. And normally we think it's time which is passing. Now in that text, Bhartrihari says in Sanskrit it goes like this, Kalona yata vayameva yata. That it's not time that is passing. Time just is. We are passing. So it's a relative motion. We think we are in the same place, so we think as if time is passing. But actually no. Time is just there. And we are the ones who are passing. This division of time into past, present and future is really a problem. Because there is nothing definitively something called future or something definitively called past. It's continually changing. For instance, today, as we sit here, Saturday is a past, is yesterday. So yesterday is the past now, and Monday, tomorrow is the future. But to come tomorrow, what is present now will have become past. And what is future now will become present tomorrow. So tomorrow will become today, tomorrow, and today will become yesterday, tomorrow. So there is these all today, tomorrow, yesterday, past, present, future are continually changing labels. I mean, even at it's actually, if you just go at the level of the moment, every second, this moment is the present moment. The next moment is the future moment. But very soon, that moment becomes the present. What was present becomes the past moment. And so that's how time seems to be moving. But really, it's we who are moving. Now, if we can, and the problem is this, our mind cannot but think in terms of past, present, and future. That's called the limitations of time in which we all dwell. Swami Vivekananda once referred to Maya, and we will, in the weeks ahead, have chance to discuss a little bit about Maya. One way of understanding Maya, which is considered the source or the cause of this world experience that we have now, is really three things. In Sanskrit, it's called Desha, Kala, Nimitta. In space, time, and causality. We cannot think of anything outside space. Everything that the mind can conceive of has to occupy some space. We cannot think of anything beyond time. There is this idea of time, and time does involve past, present, and future. And then the mind is just conditioned in thinking in terms of cause and effect. So, breaking this barrier of time, space, and causality, that's the challenge before us. And that's why Vivekananda once said, time is but the method of our thinking. We are the continual present tense. We are the eternal present tense. And that is why we often hear teachings such as living in the present moment, because the past and future are just the ways we think. So then how do we live? How can we remain eternally in the present tense? And I said, in order for us to do that, we have to make peace with our past and make peace in some ways with our future. Now, when we speak about our past, a lot of things have happened in our past, many of which we don't remember. Almost, I guess, none of us here remembers what we did in our previous birth. Some people seem curious, but it's a great blessing that we don't remember what we did. I mean, life is complicated as it is. So to remember all the things that we did in our previous births would make it even more complicated. What to speak of previous birth? We don't even remember everything that we did in this birth, which is also fine. But among the many things that have happened in our life, in this life, up to this point, we will see that only certain memories, certain things keep popping back in our mind. Those could be things which have brought us great joy, or they could be things which have brought us great pain. So only certain memories of the past sometimes get triggered in one way or the other and keep coming back. And these past memories interfere with what we are doing at present. You are doing some work, you're supposed to be doing something, and suddenly you remember what happened yesterday, or what happened last year, what happened 10 years ago, or what happened 25 years ago. And it affects the work that you're doing now. If it is something very pleasant, well, at least the pleasant memory kind of keeps you in a good mood. But then, of course, it also makes you sad because, oh, those were the good old days. We had so much fun. And then you compare it with the harsh, cold reality of the present, which doesn't look as good. So even the pleasant memories of the past can sometimes make us sad because they are just gone. The unpleasant memories of the past are still lingering in the mind, and now that is a problem. It's like the food that we eat. We don't remember every little thing that we have eaten. And it's good. There is no need to remember every little thing that we have eaten in our life. What does food do? Well, clearly, it helps us survive. It's important for physical survival, but not just survival. Food, if it is nourishing food, it helps us grow. It makes us stronger, which is what food is supposed to do. Now, but not all food does it. Only that food, clearly, which is digested well, which is healthy, and which we are able to digest. Now, what if something that we eat we are not able to digest? Then it just stays. Then it creates difficulties. It creates health issues, and it makes its presence felt. And that effect will only go, that illness will only go when I'm somehow able to digest what was undigested. More or less, that is exactly what's happening in the mind. Just as the food that the body needs be taken through the mouth, the food that the mind needs is taken in through the senses, through all the sights and colors through our eyes, the sounds through our ears, all the sensations that come through different sense organs. Now that is the food for the mind. Now that food also, when it's digested, can make us strong. It can make our intellectual, emotional life richer, healthier. But those sensations which we take in, either through sound, taste, smell, and so on, when they are not processed within, then they create indigestion. And those are the past memories that come and trouble us. So what do we do now? How do we deal with it? And the one story that often comes to mind, and I have narrated it often enough, and most of you are familiar with it, is that story about Vivekananda as a young monk in the northern city of Benares, when he was walking one day and was being chased by some big monkeys. huge, not just one or two, a big, large number of them. And he was young and he just started running. And the more he ran, the more they chased him. And how do we know this? He was an unknown monk then. Well, he narrated this story himself years later, that this is what happened. And then he said that as he was running, being chased by all these monkeys, then suddenly one elderly monk was coming from the opposite side. And he saw this young monk running and being chased by these monkeys. So that old monk looked at Swamiji and said, "Stop." He said, "Face the brutes." And then Swamiji said, he took his words to heart. He immediately stopped, he turned back and looked at those monkeys straight into their eyes. That was something the monkeys also hadn't expected. So they also stopped. And he said, as soon as he stopped and looked into their eyes, they quietly withdrew one by one. And then Swamiji narrated this incident to then make this point, that similarly, there are things in our life we run away from. And among the things that we run away from are some of the very unpleasant memories of the past. We don't know what to do with them because they seem stuck inside us. And so when they come, how do you run away from memories? Obviously not physically. The way we try is sometimes then we try to do something else. Try to engage ourselves in some other activity, which sometimes helps. When you busy yourself with something, it helps to divert the mind, and the problem isn't solved permanently, but at least temporarily you are able to forget. Sometimes this effort to escape from it can also lead to addictions, to alcohol, drugs, because we are not able to deal with the past. But not necessarily in all cases. Sometimes we just try to do something else and I said it's a quick fix solution. It works for a while until that memory comes again. And then we try to do something else again. So it seems like a continual struggle. Now we need to find a way to deal with it so that this will stop bothering us. And then we can remember that incident from Swamiji's life. And so what we need to do is to first stop running and look deeply. Think about all those troubling memories as monkeys. Look straight into their eyes. Now, that needs some amount of preparation, some amount of practice. So I don't recommend that you just go ahead and just do it, and it's like some kind of a magic formula which will immediately solve the problem. Because depending on what kind of memories are troubling us, we need to be strong, clearly. If the monkeys sense that you're just looking at them but you're really weak, they are not going to go away. And so when we look into their eyes, we need to be strong, that if at all these monkeys charge at me, I can take them on. And so we need some amount of strengthening of the mind, which can come through devotees of God. It's easier. If you remember that, well, if I'm sincere, if I'm struggling, through prayer, God will help me. Or Holy Mother will help me deal with it. That becomes so much more easier. So when we feel strong enough, then look straight into some of these troubling memories of the past. And ask yourself, what do I learn from it? The thing is this, since it's a memory of the past, it's already happened and gone. There is no way of changing it, unless like a Harry Potter movie, you just go on like, what is that? Time Turner or some, wasn't there something in the end? And Harry Potter has become too old now for anybody to remember what's there. But there was something, even I have forgotten what exactly the term was. But then some of these science fiction movies, you see that you can go back into the past and then change things. Now that still belongs to science fiction. So there is no way of changing, there is no need to change the things that already happened. It's just the memory that we are dealing with. So all that we need to do is ask, what I am today is a result of everything that has happened in my past. Both pleasant and unpleasant, good and bad, all of it was needed for me to be where I am today. So we can be grateful for everything that has happened. All that we need to do, ask is, every experience we have had in life had some role in shaping my present character, shaping my present temperament, in shaping me as a person as I am today. All that we need to know is this something which is not digested yet, I haven't yet learned what role it had to play. So looking at it into the eyes means saying, yes, this is what had happened. Have I learned the lesson? And the moment I learn the lesson, I'm able to digest that experience. It will not trouble me anymore. So life is about learning. Swami Vivekananda used to say, religion means learning. One of his disciples, Josephine MacLeod, she once mentioned that Swami Vivekananda, every day he learned something new. Every day he was learning. And we, of course, are familiar with Sri Ramakrishna's well-known saying that as long as I live, so long do I learn. So we don't stop learning after we graduate from schools. We continue to be students of life. And that's what becoming new means. Every day asking myself, what have I learned today? It could be something very little, but yes, it's something new. If at the end of the day, before going to sleep, I ask myself what I have learned and find nothing, I've not learned anything new today, then that day is wasted. But if I've learned tiny little thing, then that day is not wasted. So look at these. When you feel strong enough, encounter your own past. Ask yourself, what have I learned from it? And once I learn the lesson that has made me stronger today, that thing will stop bothering me. And a second way of dealing with these past memories is to surrender ourselves fully to God. In whichever form or in whichever way we pray, worship, or meditate. Now, surrendering, it's not just an act of saying, oh, I surrender everything to God. It's so much more easier to say it. But doing the surrendering needs some amount of ego reduction. People who are very egoistic are not able to surrender really. And so, if we are able to keep our ego in check, then surrendering to the divine becomes easier, and that's one of the best ways of trying to overcome the hold that our own past has on our present. And we will see, the more we are able to digest all of our past experiences, the more free we will feel. It's amazing. Even we may not yet have become spiritually enlightened. We may not have become Buddha yet. But even then, even just freeing ourselves from the past, just becoming strong through whatever life has taught us, it is such a liberating experience. But the past is not the only thing that is holding us back. What's also preventing us from enjoying our present fully is worries about the future. Now, no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow or next year. Well, you have weather forecasts and you have stock market analysts. I mean, there are people who are futurists who have ideas, and some of it may, and there are, of course, not to speak of astrology. So there are all these different ways when people try to know about the future, and that desire has been in the human heart all the time. Even in ancient days, kings had their royal astrologers who would predict what is going to happen. So this desire to know the future has always been within us. But there is also this fear about the future. The fear about the future comes because of the uncertainty. How do we deal with the uncertainty, the fear that we experience about the future? One way of dealing with it is to recognize that the future is only made of the present. Just like my present is made of my past. I said earlier that today we are the resultant of everything that has happened in our past. Even if one thing in our past were to be changed, we wouldn't be what we are today. And so if we are happy to be where we are today, then we have to be grateful for everything that has happened in our past. And if we are unhappy about where we are today, then we know that since what I am today is the result of what happened in the past, what I do now will determine what I am going to be in the future. So my future is in my own hands. It's not determined by some unseen fate or destiny. Those words, just strike it out of your dictionary if you have them. We are the creators of our own destiny. These are Vivekananda's words. We create our own future. And so one thing to remember is that I need to do now what is necessary for me to have the kind of future I want. And one way of asking that I found this very helpful is, what do you see? Each of us can ask ourselves that question. What do you see yourself doing, or where you see yourself 5 years from now or 10 years from now? And are you happy with what you see? Well, no one knows what is going to happen, but what is your dream, your own vision about your own life 5 years from now or 10 years from now? What do you see yourself doing? What would you like to be doing? In what state would you like to be? Once we have, it's still a dream, it's still a hope that 5 years from now or 10 years from now, this is how I hope I am, or my situation in life is. It's good to have that hope, it's good to have that dream, it's good to have that vision. And then we look at our present and then say, well, if I continue doing what I'm doing now, will it take me after 5 or 10 years to wherever I want to be? It's as simple as that. And if we are honest and realistic, and since we are not discussing it with a committee of people, we can be honest with ourselves and then find out, well, if I continue to do or think or say what I'm doing now, I feel that I can be at the spot where I want to be after 5 years, which is fine. On the other hand, if you find, now I need to make some changes in order for me to meet my dream, then make those changes, because those changes can be made only in the present time. So our present will determine our future. A second way to do it, again, same as what we said before, surrendering to the divine. But surrendering to the divine really means that God or the divine or the spiritual ideal becomes my source of security. And that's again another one good question we all can ask ourselves. To deal with uncertainties, we need something secure, we need something strong, we need something on which we can depend. Now, what are the things we do in life to have this sense of security? And one thing obviously clearly is many of us see for financial security. There's going to be a time when I will need enough finances to take care of me when I'm no longer able to earn as much as I'm earning now. And so finances definitely becomes one source of security. Another source of security clearly is the community. My family, my relatives, my friends, my spiritual community, the circles in which we move becomes another one source of security. When we know that when I need help, I can always turn to these people or these resources. Now, in all these different securities that we have in life, does my spiritual ideal play any role? In the list of priorities, if we prioritize all our securities, at what number will we put God? And what this way of thinking gives us is that the more God becomes our top priority, doesn't mean that you don't have number 2, number 3. We can have any number of resources to make our life secure. But the more our security lies in God, because that God is one bank that never fails, which doesn't need a bailout. In fact, God bails us all out all the time. So it really makes sense in some ways to find security in something that never fails. The only problem is it seems really very intangible right now. We are able to go to the bank, we're able to see our friends, we are able to see the community, but we are not really able to see God in the same way. That is one challenge. That is what makes it difficult to surrender fully to this invisible being. And that then becomes a test of our faith. You know, of course, the story of that man who was falling down a cliff, right? You know that, right? Was falling down a cliff and he just kind of, this free fall, just suddenly found a tree jutting out of the wall of the cliff and was able to hang by that. So he remained suspended. In between, there is a deep valley below, and then there is, of course, the cliff top is on this thing. So he's in the middle, and the only support he has is this little tree jutting out of that wall of that cliff. And so he just cries out and says, is there anyone? I need help, help, is there anyone? And of course, it's in a very deep, remote part of the forest. There's no one there, no reply. And he keeps on saying, help, I need help, is there anyone? And then we read in the story that suddenly the clouds part and a divine voice of the Lord comes from above and says, my child, don't be afraid. I'm here to help you. Just let go of both your hands and surrender to me. Just think of this poor guy. The tree is the only thing he has. And the surrendering to God requires just let go. And so he just thinks for a while and then looks up again. Is there anyone else up there? No, that's a situation of all of us. Because the tree is something I see. I know it's actually holding me up. I don't know how long, but at least right for now, it's helping me. And in order to surrender to God, it's like, let go of this support. That doesn't seem very practical. And if you want to know, the epilogue of the story goes on to say, it's rather sad in some ways. So this person refuses to let go of the tree. And next morning, it is extremely cold. So after next morning, people come, the search parties come, and then find this person just kind of suspended from the tree and dead. And it turns out that he was only 5 feet away from the bottom of the valley. That there was all this darkness he couldn't see. He thought it was like 100 or 200 feet, and he'll be crushed to death if he let go. But if he had really let go, then he would have just landed softly on the ground below. So this is the difficulty in surrendering. And that's why I said it becomes the test of our faith. And finally, one other way of becoming new spiritually is a self-affirmation. A meditation, in some ways, is a form of self-affirmation. By self-affirmation, I mean affirming to ourselves our spiritual identity. And that spiritual identity means how we are related to our spiritual ideal. Sri Ramakrishna called it the ripe eye. Oftentimes we suffer because we cling to the unripe eye. the lower, weaker, unripe form of the ego. Now, what is the ripe I? The ripe I is, it's still an ego, but it's an ego associated with our spiritual ideal. So rather than just seeing up, we have got, as I said, several identities. You can identify yourself in terms of your name, your gender, your nationality, and any number of ways. But I'm a devotee of God. I'm a child of God. This is also an identity. And so the more my identity as connected with God becomes my dominant identity. In other words, not that you stop being other things, we are simultaneously many things. We simultaneously, a person can be a father or a mother, a son, daughter, husband, wife, and so on. So we have all these multiple ways of identifying ourselves. But among these multiple ways, there is just one way would be somehow to connect ourselves to that ideal, either as a child of God or a servant of God, or whichever way. There are any number of ways we can relate to God. From a non-monastic, monistic ideal would be, or non-dualistic ideal would be, to think of oneself as a spirit, that the body and mind are only coverings, but I dwell within the body and mind, that I am the spirit, I am the Atman. That's also a way of self-affirmation. There are wonderful hymns in the Vedanta tradition. Sometimes they are called Pratasmarana Stotra, that the hymns specially meant to be chanted in the mornings. And those hymns are the hymns of self-affirmation, which help us affirm our spiritual identity. Maybe sometime in the weeks ahead we can take a look at some of these hymns as well. So this then is the way to renew ourselves, finding a way to process our past and get rid of the troubling elements, be fully alive in the present, and stop worrying about the future when our securities are firm and stable. And that way, we can be fresh, we can be new. So every day we wake up in the morning, don't wake up with the idea, oh, it's once again, another day, I'm going to go through the same chores again and again. No, maybe not. If you learn to look at things in a new way, even the work that you do every day, no matter how repetitive it is, no matter how monotonous it may have seemed at one time, if you look at it with new eyes, the eyes of a little child, you might be able to enjoy your work more. Every day we are not necessarily going to meet new people. So members of our family, our friends, these are the people we are going to see again and again and again. And that can get old also. We can look with new eyes even to our family, to our friends. And the more we are able to do it, we might discover in that relationship, in those people, things we may not have seen before, which might make life better, which will enrich ourselves. So with that prayer that the bodies might get old, there is no reason why the mind should get old. We can remain fresh no matter where time takes us. And that becomes possible through dealing with our past, future, and remembering our spiritual identity. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother again and again. So beginning this week, all our programs will resume, including on Tuesday and Saturday, the Arati and meditation at 6 o'clock. On Wednesday, of course, Our Vedanta study group will meet as usual at 7:30. Presently we are studying chapter 6 of the Gita. So you are welcome to all of these programs in this week and in the weeks ahead. So we'll conclude now with a prayer, and why don't we do the closing prayer together also? So we have it in your hymn book. It's on page 3, is it? What page is it on? Yeah, on page 3. So let's begin with Om once, and then we will do the prayer. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.